Okay, how's it going, everybody? I hope you're all doing well. Okay, well, so in this episode, I thought I'd try to say something about a quote that comes from the 19th century Danish existentialist Søren Kierkegaard. The quote is this: it's "Truth is subjectivity." Okay, so what does he mean by this? Well, Kierkegaard mentions this connection between truth and subjectivity in a few of his works, but it seems to me that he says most about it in a work called Concluding Unscientific Postscript. So, well, I'm going to try to say something about how he understands it there. And here I'm going to be drawing pretty heavily from a paper on Kierkegaard by philosopher Richard Schacht. Okay, so what's the best place to start? Well, how about with this? So according to Kierkegaard, the traditional view of the human being, one that he strongly reacts against, is the view of the human as the knower, or as the knowledge gatherer. That's to say, as one whose most important capacity is to just amass a lot of information or knowledge. Certainly, Kierkegaard thought that this was the view of many of the intellectuals of his own time, namely that being a knower and a system builder was what truly characterized being human. Okay, but what does he mean by knower more precisely? Well, as Schacht says, to be a knower means to take up an attitude of objectivity, which in turn means to suppress your individuality and your personality. That's to say, to see things or to understand things as they really are means to transcend yourself, to rise above your own subjectivity. Only then can you attain real knowledge. Essentially, you could say that this is, in effect, the scientist's view of knowledge. Now, here's the thing. I think that Kierkegaard thinks that there's something shallow and even something self-destroying about being or identifying as a knower like this, as always standing back and taking a detached view of things. And that's because for him, we're not just impersonal, objective knowers. We're not just cold and static repositories of information. No, what we are, each one of us, are finite, particular, subjective individuals, each with a life to live. As Kierkegaard himself says, he says, we're not human beings in general. We're not abstractions. We're living, existing individuals, unique in ourselves. Now, that's not to say that we can't be knowers or seekers after objective knowledge. It's not to say that there isn't a place for that. Of course there is. But for Kierkegaard, it's just not what it means to be truly, truly human. Again, what it means to be truly human is to live or exist, which means to exist as a singular individual and not as an abstraction or in a cold and detached way. Kierkegaard's example here of thinking of ourselves as an abstraction is when we refer to ourselves using the pronoun we, or when we label ourselves as belonging to our age or to a certain century. All this is to lose ourselves in the crowd or in the larger totality of things. Actually, it's interesting. Kierkegaard was a huge fan of Socrates. And in a way, you might say that Socrates' famous injunction, know thyself, is really something that becomes crucial for Kierkegaard here. Okay, but now what about this idea of truth? What does Kierkegaard mean when he says truth is subjectivity? Well, as Schacht argues, Kierkegaard probably doesn't take it to mean anything like a proposition that's made by us is true as long as we personally believe it or believe it passionately or some such thing. Or to put it another way, maybe, he's probably not saying that truth is based off an individual's feelings or opinions. No, as Schacht says, what Kierkegaard probably means by truth here is this. Truth is being truly human. Or in other words, it's being fully subjective as I've described it. So it has nothing to do then with mathematical or scientific truth or impersonal comprehension. And it's not about truth based off of perspectives or feelings. No, it's about being true to your essential nature as an existing being. It's to look intensely inward and be passionately engaged as the particular individual that you are. So notice something on this account then. Notice that the more you're living objectively or impersonally or detachedly, the more you see yourself in a universal or in an abstract sense, the more untruth there is. The more untrue you are as an individual. And all of this, if you don't already know, fits in nicely with Kierkegaard's religious view, which we get in his discussion of Abraham and Isaac, a discussion that we get in a book he wrote called Fear and Trembling. Anyway, the upshot of it is that for him to be religious, to be in communion with God, is only something that can happen if you completely suspend your reason or your detached intellectual approach and take a leap of faith instead. As Kierkegaard himself says, he says, to stand on one leg and prove God's existence is a very different thing from going on one's knees and thanking him. In other words, making a leap of faith requires not objectivity and rationality and an attitude of disinterestedness, but action and ongoing passion. And passion is something essentially non-rational and subjective. I mean, here's the thing. For Kierkegaard, it's entirely possible to be the world's most learned theologian and yet be dead inside. And on the other hand, it's completely possible to be an ignorant, uneducated peasant, yet be vibrantly and genuinely religious. I don't know, I think that maybe at the end of the day, what Kierkegaard wants to do is to warn us to avoid forgetting or avoiding life by being completely absorbed in objective and intellectual thought, believing that this is the highest human pursuit. He wants us to stop understanding existence intellectually or thinking that there's some kind of grand system to it. What he wants to do is to offer a corrective against any kind of abstract, impersonal intellectualism and knowledge gathering. And that corrective is pretty clear. It's the passionate living of life. A life that might be understood backwards, sure, but one that can only be lived forwards. Bye for now.